Okay, Bill. I think we're live
Okay.
now.
Think we're live now.
Yes, we are. We're live. We're on mine. I don't know if we're live on yours though, so you might want to double check.
No, but if I hit go live, I'm just going to have a single camera on here.
Hmm.
I got 160 people piled up too.
Oh man. So I typed
Is
in. It's streaming to both mine and yours. So if you are to hit go live and see what happens. Worst case, I don't know. We'll have to maybe redirect them to my channel.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Okay. Well,
Shameless plug.
we're live now. We're live now. I'm going to turn the volume up so everyone can hear me. Can you guys all hear and see us real quick on my end? Someone hit the comment section. All right. So listen, this is a two-person live stream, but right now we only got one person live the way this is set up. So Taylor, why don't you send me over real quick on an email the link that they need to be at to watch this, and then
Yep.
I will put it down in the description box. So, hey, everyone, I just want you to know we're going to blame this all on Taylor, all right? He's the one that set this all up. We're going to be able to watch it streamed from his channel. I don't know what happened here, but that's fine. It's just really getting you guys informed on the executive order and some other stuff that he and I are just going to kind of geek out about. So I just apologize for that.
You can blame me. I'll take all the
We're going to
blame.
blame Taylor. We're going to blame Taylor.
Extreme ownership.
Is it the same? It's not the link you sent me already, is it?
It's the I just emailed it to you. The YouTube link should have the thumbnail.
So for all of you who are there we go. All right, so here you go, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and put. God dang it, Taylor! Why can't you just give me a simple link?
That's all I gave you was a link.
No, man, you gave me. Look at that. Then I got an ad here and everything. Jesus H.
Hey, that's YouTube. You can blame YouTube for the ads.
Oh my god. All right, here we go, guys. There it is, right there in the description box. In the description box. That is the link. You can go over there and hang out with Washington Gun Law and Taylor from Defenders and Disciples. We'll try to have our shit together by then. So anyways, if you guys all want to just start migrating over there, link is in the description box. I'm going to give them a couple more minutes just to migrate over there, watch the numbers drop from here, and then go to your channel. And again, if you guys are just joining us, in the description box, posted just less than a minute ago, you will see a YouTube link that is to get you over to Defenders and Disciples. We tried to do a simultaneous stream, and well, you can see how well that worked out. So head on over to Defenders and Disciples and check us out over there. We're going to log off in about 60 more seconds, and then we're already live over there on that channel. So for those of you who are migrating over, you're hearing the same old crap over and over and over. Again, this is Taylor's fault, not Bill's. Remember that.
I'll take all ownership on that.
All right, so I am going to end the live stream here, and you guys, I'll see you on the other side, everyone.
All right, looks like we got a lot of people. Howdy from Vancouver.
All right. All right, here we go.
Awesome. So, everyone wants to hear about this executive order and your take on that, and I definitely want to hear. I just would love to hear like what you think the benefits of it are, what it actually does, and what can we expect from it.
Yeah. Okay. So the executive order. First of all, if people thought that we were going to get an executive order and just poof, everything's going to be a-okay. Number one, no president would write an executive order like that. And number two, I think you overestimate the power of the presidency to some degree.
And they shouldn't have that power.
No, because just think, if you think that President Trump could just come in and say, I hereby declare that California and Maryland and New York's laws are all unconstitutional and therefore we're striking them down.
Yep.
Just have a change in political winds, have a change in administration, and what kind of laws can be struck down in your states that you're fond of.
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons that we have this thing called the balance of power. What it does do, though, is this is important. Number one, I know a lot of people had a lot of trepidation about Pam Bondi, okay? There was mixed report cards on her as whether or not she was really going to be pro Second Amendment or not. What this does is it clearly gives her 30 days to put up or shut up, because the plan of action within the order says that within 30 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General shall examine all orders, regulations, guidance plan, international agreements, and other actions of executive departments and agencies to assess any ongoing infringements of Second Amendment rights of our citizens. So she's essentially being ordered to do a top to bottom autopsy on everything that the previous administration has done, from rulemaking orders to positions they've taken on litigation to things that came out of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And so it really does give Attorney General Bondi a blank check to tear through everything and come up with a plan as to what needs to be corrected to bring the Second Amendment back into a line with what the founders believed it would be.
Okay. What were some of the details of that? Like, I know they listed like certain things,
Yeah.
certain
So
instructions.
there's seven. It's a good question. They listed seven things that the president said, I specifically need you to take a look at those. I think there's about 4 that we can really focus on. Number 1 is all presidential and agency actions from January 21 through January of 25. So that is everything that the president did through executive order, anything that any agency, including our favorite 3-letter agency, the ATF, did during the entire Biden administration. Number 2, rules promulgated by the Department of Justice, including the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms through January of 21 through January of 2025. So all your rulemaking orders, things that candidly help Washington Gun Law grow as a channel with some of these rulemaking orders, trying to make heads or tails out of them. All of those are subject to review. Agencies' plans and orders and actions on the so-called enhanced regulatory enforcement policy, or what some people may call the zero tolerance policy on FFLs. That is a big one, because that policy has been used to run all sorts of FFLs out of business. Yeah. And then finally, the position, this is huge, the positions taken by the United States Department of Justice in any and all ongoing or potential litigation. And give me 1 second. I'm going to step away and get my heater turned off because I think it's making background noise. So give me 1 second.
All right. Yeah. And guys, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat over here on the right side.
All right. Sorry about that.
You're good.
So, obviously, I think the 2 that the viewers will most care about is really a lot of the stuff that we routinely cover at Washington Gun Law. That is the rulemaking orders and the positions that the Department of Justice is taking on several cases.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I've talked about this before with the ATF. It's, people, they say, well, we don't make laws. It's like, okay, well, laws have words and words have meaning. And if you're changing the meaning of those words, then you're by effect
changing the meaning of the law. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a perfect analysis.
Yeah. So, so right now, I mean, this doesn't really do much. It's just setting the foundation for a lot of potential things that could happen. Really good things.
I think about 30 days out from now, there will be a report. It has to be it's submitted by the Attorney General through the White House Domestic Policy Council, and then it would be presented to the president. I think that we're going to see a lot. There's a lot of things that could be in there. I did a video yesterday, 2 days ago, actually, where we talked about some of the things that we think Attorney General Bondi could do. We kind of broke them down by easy stuff, a little bit more outside the box kind of stuff, and then stuff that's kind of monumental and undertaking. But I think more importantly, for all the people who are skeptical of her and her, willingness to defend Second Amendment rights, I think the proof will be in the pudding there, because she really has a blank check here to do a lot of really positive things to preserve inalienable rights.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, Trump. He's been one of those presidents where you don't really know. He's such a populist, and so you don't really know whether or not he is pro or against Second Amendment. We had the bump stock ban, and now with this, I mean, I think that he is. It seems to me is more open to being advised by people that know much more than he does, like particularly his sons, on gun rights and stuff like that. So
I think there's been
optimistic about that.
Yeah, I think there's been a remarkable transformation of Donald Trump. And I know a lot of the political players believe that maybe losing 4 years ago was the best thing to ever happen to him. I think he clearly He seems to be far more well organized. I think he's picked a much better cabinet in the sense of people who are truly going to be loyal to the president and to his policies. I think that was really important. I think he literally had people undermining him from within his first 4 years around. But yeah, the jury's out on him as the Second Amendment president, isn't it? Because his first term, really about the only thing we had was a bump stock ban, which ultimately was thrown out by the United States Supreme Court. But
Right.
it was the development of a playbook that the Biden administration used on 4 separate occasions, because never before we had this, hey, let's just get the ATF to make a huge new rule and reinterpret the law so that millions of people go from lawful to felons literally overnight. And they did that with, the forced reset trigger rule. They did that with the rule on frames and receivers. They did that with the rule on pistol braces.
Yeah. Yeah. I hoping all that gets reined in. We're trying to find some of these questions here in the chat. Let's see.
Well, let me while you're doing that, let me give you some to the viewers out there some things. So here's some really easy things. These are easy that Pam Bondi could put in her proposed list of suggestions to the president. Okay, the pistol brace rule, the rule on forced reset triggers, and the rule on zero tolerance on the FFL. Those are only rules that are codified in the Code of Federal Regulations, and all you have to do to withdraw them is supply written notice and a meaningful opportunity for the public to be heard on it with an acceptable deadline. And at that point, once the deadline is reached and you have provided procedural due process to the public, those rules can be stricken from the CFRs.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't require an act of Congress. There is nothing unconstitutional about withdrawing rules, so there can't be any constitutional. Implementing rules can squish out constitutional rights. Recalling them, no, it doesn't do that. So the only arguments that people could have against the United States government is because they just don't want them to. Those aren't legal arguments. So all 3 of those rules could be withdrawn pretty quick. Okay. Now, the rule on frames and receivers is a little stickier. And here's why. It's already been argued in front of the United States Supreme Court. And we're expecting a ruling. Cases Garland v. Vanderstock is the name of the case. And so if I were to have a one-on-one with Attorney General Bondi, I would probably tell her, don't be thinking about withdrawing that rule yet, because I don't think you should try to moot something with the United States Supreme Court. You don't really know what kind of reaction you might get out of the bench at a time where you're begging the Supreme Court to accept review of a bunch of other cases. So I think you got to let that one take its course. Now, if the court comes back and says the rule's unconstitutional, problem solved, right? If the court comes back and says we believe the rule is constitutional, the Attorney General still could at that point move to withdraw the rule. Okay. The rule can be withdrawn from, as long as you comply with the Administrative Procedure Act, rules can be withdrawn. And they're actually much easier to withdraw them than they are to implement them.
Someone asked here, I'm thinking that if he can get Congress to repeal the NFA and the other added laws, we would not have to get rid of the ATF and they can focus on real crime. I'm assuming that's Trump.
Well, yeah, I will assume that means the president. Yeah. Listen, abolishing the NFA, the National Firearms Act of 1934, with the current numbers that you have in both the House and Senate is mathematically impossible. Just can't be done. Can't be done. You don't have the votes in the Senate, and in order to have the votes in the House, you'd have to have every single Republican hold the line. And unlike Democrats who do seem to hold the line, Republicans,
they're lockstep.
Some Republicans have a tendency to stray a little bit. I think that's because more Republicans engage in independent thought too, is one of the reasons. So I get this desire, 2 things, this desire to get rid of the NFA. That, if I was to put that in a list of things, would it be good? Sure. How easy would it be? It's like moving mountains. Right? It's like you got to repeal federal law that's been in effect for almost 100 years. And with a Congress where you got very slim majorities in both chambers, very, very difficult to do. The abolishing of the ATF. hot button issue. A lot of people have been pounding on that drum for a while. And, when you read stories like Mark Manley out there in Maryland or some of the other just horrific stories we get, we understand why we have this desire to abolish the ATF. There's a political undertone to all of this. If you're in the, obviously, because you're talking about a presidential administration. Yes, a president who does not have re-election on the back end of this term, but one that will have to deal with politics nonetheless, has a midterm in less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You ran on a law and you ran on Law and Order as a campaign platform, and the American people voted you in for that reason. Abolishing a law enforcement agency, I don't know if that fits into what you're trying to accomplish. And candidly, I think we have to ask ourselves, if you get rid of the ATF, who then starts enforcing these federal gun laws? Because getting rid of the ATF doesn't get rid of federal gun laws. It gets rid of the ATF. So then who is it? The FBI? Or do they start trying to deputize local law enforcement agencies? It could be a real mess. Is the better solution to get the ATF back to what they're supposed to be doing? Going after criminal enterprises. What if the ATF suddenly was a Pro 2A organization, in the sense that when they see states that are trying to curb gun violence through unconstitutional methods, you would begin to see the United States Department of Justice author amicus briefs against that legislation? Why couldn't that happen?
Yeah.
So I think that a refined, retuned ATF is actually more beneficial to us than just abolishing it, because it doesn't get rid of many of our problems, which is not just the ATF, it's the federal gun laws. And those, try to abolish those. Again, now we're talking about moving mountains in Congress.
Isn't there a recent Hearing Protection Act that's been proposed, or a new one, or like revitalized? Yes. What are your thoughts on that?
So the Hearing Protection Act, and there's a couple of other bills that are very similar, are bills that are designed to, by legislation, remove suppressors from the NFA. Now, interestingly, we also have a 3-judge panel in the Fifth Circuit, who said that suppressors are not even protected by the Second Amendment. So pull them out of the NFA, and then have a ruling that says the Second Amendment doesn't protect them at all. And now we're getting into some very uncharted waters here, okay? And could you begin to see more and more states, if you were to leave suppressors completely out in the open like that, that would try to do what Illinois has done with a lot more bans? I don't know. That's kind of deep, looking into the tea leaves. Do I think suppressors should be removed from the NFA? Absolutely, they should be. They absolutely should be. I think that the reasons that suppressors went in 1934 versus how suppressors are used today are so radically different. There is no need to have the extra layers of federal regulation. And interestingly, I understand that when you go to Western Europe, where it's near impossible to get a firearm, you can buy a suppressor right off the shelf.
For hunting.
Yeah.
We talked about this last time, where people think about, like, for example, like a sling. A sling is like not part of the firearm, right? So it's technically really not covered under the Second Amendment. Now, someone could argue that maybe you need a sling in the employment of using the gun, but does a suppressor fall into that as well? Because
according
it's
to
just
the
a
3-judge
muffle for the
panel
gun.
of the Fifth Circuit, yeah, they said it's merely an attachment. And one of the big things is you don't need a suppressor to have an operable firearm. And an inoperable firearm doesn't become suddenly operable when you add a suppressor.
Okay.
Dangerous line of reasoning, because you take some of these courts where they get very creative in their civilian disarmament measures. What happens when you start banning triggers and barrels?
Yeah.
Now, I think we could all agree that a trigger is absolutely necessary to the proper working order of a firearm, but is the Ninth Circuit going to necessarily see it that way?
Interesting. Yeah, let's see what other questions we have here. There's a lot, so I'm trying to sift through them here. Actually hear. Is there any way to get SCOTUS to actually hear the cases waiting?
Well, yeah, no, I know exactly. What that viewer is probably talking about is the Snope v. Brown and Ocean State Tactical versus Rhode Island. 2 huge cases, assault weapon ban, magazine bans. still sitting before the United States Supreme Court, have not been accepted for review, have not been denied. Unfortunately, at this point, if they are accepted, we're looking at the fall of this year, which means we're not getting a ruling until late spring, early summer of 2026, which for people in certain states, that means at least another 12 months of misery. About the only thing that the Department of Justice could do is they could file a motion for leave to file an amicus brief and then file an amicus brief on behalf of the petitioners in that case, saying that, yes, the United States Supreme Court should accept review of this. Do I think that could be persuasive? Well, if the United States Department of Justice is asking the United States Supreme Court to accept review of these matters because this needs to be clearly delineated once and for all, I think it could have some persuasive effect. But I think the thing we've learned with this Supreme Court is trying to predict their behavior is really a crap shot.
What would it take to pass national reciprocity?
And it's the same thing it would take to pass any other piece of gun legislation. It'd have to pass out of the House. It'd have to pass out of the Senate. I
guess what I meant by that is, do you think it's realistic given what we have right now?
Yeah, I think it is mildly possible. I don't think it's possible, though, in the format that we've seen some of the other national. First of all, let's talk about the difference. National concealed carry reciprocity versus national constitutional carry. Okay, big difference, right? National concealed carry reciprocity is you are licensed in some state, and that license then is good in the other 49 states.
Like a driver's license.
Like exactly like a driver's license, which yours does work in the other 49 states. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, national constitutional carry is you don't need a driver's license to drive. You can drive wherever you want, anywhere in the country. Okay. Don't see that being a realistic possibility because I don't think there would be the political will for that.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
National concealed carry reciprocity could be passed, but we're going to get into some issues where some states allow 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to carry while others don't.
Yeah.
Some states have training requirements, other states don't. Washington State, all you got to do is pass a background check. That's it. Fill out the application. 30 days later, you're good to go. Some states you gotta, it's 2 years to wait and $3,000 and like psych evals and all of this crap. So where is the happy medium going to be where you have enough legislators willing to sign on to it? Because you're probably going to need a small amount of Democratic support to get it over the top. And so you're probably going to have to concede some points. And those who are absolutists, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, I'm just saying there's a segment of the 2A population that I call absolutists, which they absolutely believe all gun laws are unconstitutional.
They believe you should be able to own nuclear weapons.
Whatever. I mean, everyone's entitled to their views.
According to a poll I did, it's about 14% believe that.
Well, whatever. Listen,
we're not going to get into that right now, though.
I don't tell people how to think. I just give them all the stuff to think about. I do think there is a chance for national concealed carry. I don't think those in the 2A community will be really thrilled with it if it comes to fruition, but it's going to be better than what we currently have. That's for certain.
Yeah, because right now, every time you want to take a trip, let's get on some website and check the reciprocity,
and then
has anything changed?
Their information is accurate, and and then you got certain states, California, Hawaii, New York, although both California and New York have started backing off on this now, where they would not accept any out-of-state permit, nor would they grant an out-of-state traveler permit. Okay, so like for example, you're in Tennessee, I'm in Washington. Washington, we only accept 9 states. Okay, Tennessee is not one of them. But if you wanted to come out here, you could apply for an out-of-state permit. And instead of 30 days, they got up to 60 days to give you yours because you're an out-of-state person. But once you pass your background check, they would give you an out-of-state permit. And then when you're in Washington State, you would get to carry exactly as I do.
Yeah.
So, but when you don't have reciprocity and then you can't get an out-of-state permit, think how many people travel to California and New York on an annual basis. And they can't protect their lives when they're in that state.
So crazy.
Well, yeah, because no other constitutional right ends at a state line.
Someone asked, why is SCOTUS so shy to take assault weapon and mag bans? People overestimate how controversial it would be to overturn them. Overturning Roe was 1,000 times more controversial than overturning bans.
Well,
This is something too with it.
that last statement I agree with completely. Overturning Roe was immensely controversial.
So
Immensely
with the
controversial.
2A and like the SCOTUS, when I took a common law class, one thing that surprised me is how few cases they have taken that relate to gun rights. Just over the
No,
history, like
yeah,
it's
no.
very few.
If you geek out on it just a little bit, you can memorize most of the important ones in about 2 or 3 days because there's
Hmm.
not a huge. You do First Amendment law, it's like, oh my God, there's a
Yeah,
gajillion cases on that
yeah,
stuff, right?
that and fourth.
Um, I mean, why? I don't know. It's always been the redheaded stepchild of the Bill of Rights. It's always been mistreated by states. It's been mistreated by the federal government. It's been
Hmm.
mistreated by the court system. Do I think that there are political overtones or undertones, whatever you want to say to it? Yeah, of course there is. But then again, I've never understood that so much with the Supreme Court. It's not like you're going to get voted off the bench.
Yeah, it's a freaking lifetime appointment.
It's a lifetime appointment. You know, the only way they occasionally they retire, and most often they just die on the bench. You know, so it's I never understood the trepidation that the court has had going back decades and decades
Hmm.
to and take a look at how many of these laws that are clearly unconstitutional, especially when we're analyzing under the Bruin analysis. And some of these bans have been in place since the 1990s. The court hasn't answered the question on any of it yet. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's wild. Someone asks, what is the reasonable probability that the new order will reach Washington State assault weapons ban and high cap magazine ban?
The executive order,
I think
zero
that's what they
chance.
mean.
Yeah, zero chance because it's not like the president can just by executive order say, I believe this state's laws are unconstitutional and therefore I'm hereby banning these laws. Can't be done. Separation of powers. Wouldn't want a president to have that kind of power, okay, on either side of the fence. So
Hmm.
what's going to save folks in Washington State, my home state, out in Maryland, New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, places like that, is that the Snopes case is going to have to be accepted. Okay. Once the Snopes case is accepted, if the Supreme Court rules as I anticipate they would, the day that ruling comes down, assault weapon bans would be unconstitutional. I mean, the minute it comes
Explain
down,
again the Snopes case.
Snopes case is the Maryland assault weapon ban case. Okay. And if you look at the statute, it's going to be very similar to people who are living in other states that have assault weapon bans right now. So semi-automatic rifles that accept a detachable magazine and have any of the following attachments. And it's just everything you find in the AR and AK platform.
Yep.
So that case is sitting right there on the front steps on a petition for certiorari by the United States Supreme Court. The case is completed. There's no other stuff that could ever be done on this case. So it's the exact posture that the Supreme Court needs a case in. The Ocean State tactical case is an exact same posture dealing with magazine bans in the state of Rhode Island. If you could get the Supreme Court to accept both of those cases and consolidate it onto one calendar, which would be easy to do, you could literally determine the legality of assault weapon bans and magazine bans in one fell swoop.
Wow. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. And so for the viewer to understand, like, what would states be able to do about that? The answer is not much. Let me give you an example. Case called Hodges v. Obergefell. Very, very famous Supreme Court case. Everyone's heard of it. They just don't remember the name. Hodges v. Obergefell was the Supreme Court case that said gay marriage is constitutional. Okay. Now, we know that there were some states that were not too cool with issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Okay. That's just politically where those states were coming from. They don't need to be named because they are who they are. But the day that opinion came down, guess what the county clerks were doing the very next day in all of those states? You're issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples, right? You didn't hear any state like, let's say, Arkansas or Mississippi or Louisiana, notoriously very conservative state. No one wrote a Hodges response bill, did they? No, they just followed the law of the land. Now, what do I think should happen in states if assault weapon bans are struck down? The exact same thing. Do I think some states will do it that way? Yes, I do. But I do think some states like California and stuff will probably try to write a Snopes response bill or something like that and figure out how, well, we'll just try to ban them this way instead. Don't be surprised if that happens.
Speaking of that, someone asked, could this is Domhnall 1989, could Congress pass a law that is effectively a federal level preemption law, i.e., only the federal government has the right to set laws impacting the 2A?
So here's the thing. If you wrote a law like that, I think it could be challenged under the 10th Amendment. Because if you take a look at the way the country was set up, there were certain powers that were enumerated to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't in that list of, and by the way, firearm regulation was not one of them. Okay. And so actually all other powers are reserved for the states at that point. If it passed constitutional muster, could the federal government set a floor and a ceiling? Yeah, because under federal supremacy law, their law would reign supreme over any state law. States can provide more protections to its citizens than the federal law does or the federal constitution.
Like
but
Fourth
they cannot
Amendment.
provide less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like for
Again,
police
getting
officers.
a piece of legislation like that passed, I mean, you know, if we had a 62-38 majority in the Senate and a 44-seat majority in the House, yeah, that could be real possible at that point. But the numerical value in both chambers isn't there right now.
Yeah, and I get their point, because if you think about the Fourth Amendment, for example, for example, for police, under the Fourth Amendment, federal law gives us this much leeway, and then the state law gives us this much leeway, and then the city this much, and then the department. It's like as you go down that inverse pyramid, your restrictions as a police officer in terms of like what you can do become more and more restricted.
Or the freedoms that you enjoy as a citizen, as a
it's inverted. Yeah,
that's right.
And so I see their point here, because like imagine if like we're instead of the 2A, we think about the first or fourth A, and we had a state that's like, well, no, we're going to restrict, or we're going to be more invasive on your right to privacy or on your First Amendment, and like no one would stand for that. But yet when it comes to the 2A, it's like, okay, ARs are not prohibited federally, but we have states that are being more restrictive than the federal government, and it's completely backwards.
And you got some federal courts out there right now that have ruled that the AR-15 is not even protected by the Second Amendment. Seventh Circuit Circuit ruled that way. So
let's see, Bill, you okay, someone asked, Bill, you have teased the possibility of you moving to Idaho on a few occasions. Are you going to move to Are you going to move? And if so, will you be in practice? Okay.
Okay. So the answer to that question is check with me after this legislative session. And there's a lot of things, and it's very few of them are gun related, believe it or not, even though that's what I talk about. There's some other things, and we're not going to get into it here on this interview here, but there's some things going on with public education, parents' rights, taxation, things like that in Washington State that, everyone has a certain pain threshold. I was just talking to Mrs. Gunlaw about it yesterday. I have 3 states in mind. She's okay with 2 of them. One is Idaho, which is a gorgeous state, especially North Idaho. Fantastic. The other one's Montana. And then I'd like to, personally, if it were up to me, I would move to Nevada. But Mrs. Gunlaw.
I mean, Tennessee's open. We're hiring.
No, we actually got to drive through your whole state, and Tennessee has got it going on. They really do. That is a fantastic state. People were awesome. Loved your town. Your town was awesome. So yeah, but getting my wife 2 to 3 time zones away, no, I'm not even gonna try that.
Let's see, someone said at some point we need people to stand up and just tell the elected that they are our rights and we are not asking. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. And some people have asked on my channel, like, when you just gonna say that's it, just tell everyone to disobey the laws? Well, the problem is I got this thing called the Bar Association, and they would get a little ticked off about me basically advocating for, violating laws, willfully violating laws. So because I hold myself out as an attorney on the channel, I do try to stay within the confines of the ethical rules that we have as lawyers, which can restrict at times how I speak about things.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that too, because even just on an individual level, this whole shall not comply mentality. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, until the ATF is kicking down your door in the middle of the night and shooting your dog, and
Well,
like you have a
right.
family, and like this is one of those things where people, you have the extremists that are like, well, it's our rights and we got to stand up. It's like, you're absolutely right, and there are other options in terms of in legislative process, like voting. Like, it's not just shall not comply, or oh, I lost him in a boating accident. There's
Yeah.
that doesn't really help, in my opinion.
I tend to agree with you on that. But, again, everyone has a certain pain threshold.
Hmm.
And, if you're living in some of these states, it's just a constant onslaught of civilian disarmament.
Yes.
Yet they know that these people are not the problem. All I can ever do with my channel is, and again, I try to stick by the motto that I'm not going to tell you how to think. I'm going to give you all the stuff to think about. And I always say, hey, if you don't obey this law and you're caught in violation of it, these are the penalties for it.
Right.
Ultimately, everyone's a big boy and a big girl that watches my channel. Same with yours. They can make their own choices. But you're not going to see me advocating like, I just say today we all march to the state capitol, throw our middle finger up and tell them we're not going to obey the law anymore, and go parading around with prohibited weapons. And it would be
Yeah.
really cool. Some other content creators could get away with that because the Bar Association wouldn't give a crap what they had to say. But like in my state, you can imagine that after I went after the Attorney General for the last 4.5, 5 years, who's now our governor, he would love nothing more than a guy like me to totally step in it like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't want to give him I don't want to give it to him. So I got to be careful about what I say. I think people can understand what I mean. And I get their frustration. And it's not just for folks in Washington. There's a lot of other folks. If you live in Illinois, no state's mistreated its citizens worse than Illinois. They got it worse than anybody. And that's saying something. California folks have it just, California, they're so mistreated by their state government. State government literally hates the citizenry of California. It's terrible. So I understand this tipping point that some people are getting to. And all I can do is try to give them hope and say, listen, we're trying to win this thing through sane methods, trying to win it in the court system. But, we have setbacks just like we do anywhere else. And that's all we can do. And just pray that, we're eventually going to find sanity in this area.
I think we got a valid solution here from Jesse. He said,
yeah,
what if an AR identifies as a baseball bat? Isn't that a workaround to all of this in today's climate?
Yeah.
There you go, right there.
That's
a cordless hole puncher.
It's as intelligent as any other argument the other side is coming up with, for sure.
Yeah. Someone asked, why do they even keep pushing gun laws? It's become such a low priority for voters. According to a polling data, it's not even top 10 for Democrats anymore.
No, it's not. But you see, because gun control is not about the guns, never has been, never will be. It's about control. Mm-hmm. And clearly you are seeing one party, one side of the political spectrum, cling for power, do anything humanly possible to obtain power. And certainly a disarmed citizenry is much easier to control than an armed citizenry. So they will never, unless there is a radical shift in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party went back to the party they were in the 1950s, where they were looking out for the little guy. They were looking out for the blue collar guy. They were looking out for the union guy. And if you go back and you look at the policies in the 50s and the 60s, I think the Democrats were writing policies that were more catered to those people. But now they become the 80-20 party, right? They just want to focus on the 20% of the fringe issues and the 80% of the real life issues that Americans truly struggle with. They don't care about this anymore. It's sad, but it's actually, it's a wonderful opportunity for Republicans, especially if we start running our party more rather than like having in this exclusive conservative checklist. Oh, he only met 10 of the 12 boxes, so he's a rhino. We have an opportunity to really turn the Republican Party into a majority party. And it doesn't need to be about nothing but conservative ideas. It needs just to be about common sense. That's all they have to do to become the majority party, is be the party of common sense. Common sense sometimes has very moderate viewpoints to it. Okay?
Yeah.
Because that's where common sense lies. Not always, Not always, but sometimes it does. And so there's an opportunity out there to reach across the aisle and find some other groups that normally are not aligned with conservative movements, find what we have in common and bring them into the tent.
Yeah, hence common.
That's right.
Jeff, the real Jeff said or asked, is there anything in the books that can be used to hold legislators and judges accountable for purposefully trampling the rights of citizens?
Yeah, great question. Get it so frequently. There is something in the books that keeps us from being able to do that, and that's called sovereign immunity. So, and I know there's ways to pierce sovereign immunity and things such as that, but typically, unless the act is very, very, very blatant, and there's a rare instances where you could actually argue by legal standards that it was blatant. As you know, as a former police officer, there's sovereign immunity for what officers do with certain exceptions. You cross certain lines, they could pierce that sovereign immunity.
Although I'll say our immunity was not as generous as some of these judges seem to have.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And it's far less generous today for law enforcement than it was 25, 30 years ago. Okay. And there was good reasons for that. And then there was some bad reasons for why that happened. But that's the reality of it. But no, if you're a judge, if you're a politician, no, you have complete and total sovereign immunity. Now, there is a bill out here in Washington. And of course, now that I mentioned it, I'm not going to remember. Here it is. I got my cheat sheet right here. Let me look at this real quick. It is, 1132. House Bill 1132, kicking around in Washington State right now. That would limit your ability to purchase one firearm every 30-day period, and then it also limits how much ammunition you can purchase in any one transaction. That law was passed in California 2 years ago. There is not a single court anywhere in California, anywhere in the Ninth Circuit, that has viewed this law and not said this is totally unconstitutional. The law has never been enacted in California. Think about that. Never enacted.
Wow.
The lead case out of the Ninth Circuit is a case called Nguyen v. Bonta. Okay. And if you go and geek out on that case, you will realize I think FPC is leading the charge on that one, and they've been just kicking some ass on that case. But the case is a disgrace to the California Attorney General's office. I mean, they've just bumbled this thing, and it's a horse crap law. So with that in mind, along comes two representatives in Washington State who are like, hey, we should try that here in Washington. And one of the things I pointed out in the video is that normally it's hard to prove that legislators are doing things that they know is blatantly unconstitutional. This might be a situation where that actually can be proven. Because if they do pass this bill, I mean, it's California. It's right down the road from here, basically. And we all sit in the Ninth Circuit, which means all of those rulings that have come out of the Ninth Circuit that said this law is unconstitutional would apply here in Washington State also. And yet the legislature may choose to move forward and pass this bill anyways. And I do think that to me is a real crossing of of a Rubicon there, where a state literally has been on notice. This law is unconstitutional and you did it anyways. So that's 1132 out here in Washington.
Someone asked, Bill, as citizens, other than, quote, go vote or, quote, call your congressman, what can we truly do to fight for our rights? Go vote doesn't seem to be working. And before you answer that, and maybe you'll answer with this, I think part of the problem is how many people don't vote. Yeah. And this person smoking Northwest Barbecue, you probably know a lot of people that don't vote. I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's a large portion of society.
Well, yeah, according to the New York Post, in September of just last year, there were 10 million gun owners and or hunters in the United States that were not registered to vote. 10 million. And then there was like over 500,000 in Pennsylvania, over 500,000 in Virginia, over 500,000 in North Carolina, all the swing states, It was like, and if you just had those 10 million people participate.
Oh my gosh. That would change it all.
There would be a real question as to whether or not the Republican Party truly is the minority party when you take a look at those 10 million votes added to it. So, I know a lot of your viewers vote and they think like, well, my vote doesn't count. And in some states, that I get where that comes from. The other thing is that you have to support the organizations that are going to take the fight to this BS.
GOA, FPC.
GOA. FPC, Second Amendment Foundation, NAGR. if you just go back and you look at my channel or watch any of the other similar channels, you'll hear us say the same thing. Today's case is GOA v. Garland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, guess who's leading the charge of it? You will notice that I rarely will talk about today. We're going to talk about United States of America versus NRA.
Yeah, that I was about to say it. Support the organizations that don't just send you a bunch of junk mail.
Yeah. Now, I do think that the NRA is working very hard behind the scenes to reinvent themselves. And I know some of the people who are being considered for the board of directors, I'm not going to name names right now, but they definitely have a much more 21st century view of what the NRA should be and could become. And candidly, a lot of them are like, we kind of want to take some of the playbook from GOA and Second Amendment Foundation and FPC and kind of implement that into the program. And I think if they cut back on the mailers by about 75%, took all that money and dumped it into litigation, really be
Matthew
doing
said,
something. So,
I would say by getting Trump in, we did vote. His last EO seems like it will help things. So executive order. So we need to wait and see. Yeah, I completely agree, Matthew. I think this election showed us that they did not have it as rigged as some people previously thought they did. And we have far more power when we mobilize in that way than we originally thought we did.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think that everyone who's a true Second Amendment advocate is going to be just a little disappointed in what Pam Bondi comes back in 30 days. Why? Because it's like Christmas time and you want everything on your wish list. I get it. Okay. You're not going to get everything on your wish list, but how much of that wish list? Hopefully it's not just a couple of items. Hopefully it's a whole laundry list of things, but that's going to really demonstrate not only where this attorney general is coming from, but where this administration is coming from. There's another thing that we're still yet to happen, which is the appointment of an ATF director. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've heard certain names kicked around. I've been told, asked not to mention any of the names that I've heard. I would like to see a person.
Brandon Herrera.
No one needs me to spill that name out. That name's been kicked around. Yeah, I don't know how realistic that is, though.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I recommend Mark Smith, actually, from Four Boxes Diner. This is an inside joke with me and him. But I would like to see somebody maybe come in as ATF director who has not only a knowledge of firearms, but maybe has worked for an organization that was defending Second Amendment rights. Because I do think that the ATF has to take much more of like a sheriff's department mentality. I'm assuming that the sheriff's departments out in Tennessee are like how they are out here in Washington, which is they take fighting crime very seriously, but they also take protecting the constitutional rights of the citizens equally as seriously.
Yeah.
And, we have, I think, all but 2 sheriffs in this state said, assault weapon ban, I'm not enforcing it. Magazine ban, I'm not enforcing it. Why? Because I think it's unconstitutional. Okay. And you look at Illinois has that same phenomena as well. What if the ATF had that mentality of, listen, we're going to come down on the criminal enterprises and we're going to go after the people who are making these Glock switches and all these other things. And we're going to start going after people who are stealing guns and unlawfully possessing guns, the real problem. And we're going to do all that, but we're going to equally be as protective of Second Amendment rights because we don't want to see states straying off the path here thinking that they're going to somehow or another solve problems by squishing out constitutional rights. And could the ATF and the DOJ become those training wheels, those bumpers, if you would, to keep states from going a little overboard? It's a possibility.
Yeah. I got a question, and you see this a lot. People say all gun laws are unconstitutional. What would you say to that? And actually, before you answer, can you hold on just a second? Let's take a 2-minute break. I got to pee.
2-minute break. You got intermission music to play for people?
Yeah. I'm gonna. They can play their own music. All right. So the question was, the people that say all gun laws are unconstitutional.
All right. So that could be a bit of a setup question here because you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. So this is what I'll say about it. I do believe that it is a little bit more complicated than shall not be infringed, despite the fact that I get these viewers, they'll watch a video for 10 minutes like, why did it take 10 minutes to get through that? It shall not be infringed. why do you need to watch the videos if you think it's that easy?
Mhm.
There is no doubt that there is a historical tradition of regulating firearms in some manner. Why do I say that? Because, well, the test to determine the constitutionality of gun control measures is to take a look at what our history of doing it was.
Mhm.
Okay. Do I think that the amounts of gun laws and the levels of gun laws and the areas in which gun laws regulate today is similar to what the founding fathers envisioned? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But is there a history of banning weapons which are dangerous and unusual? Yes, there is. Predates even the Declaration of Independence. Is there a history of disarming individuals that are deemed to be dangerous? Yes, goes all the way back to the colonial times, well before the Declaration of Independence. So I do believe that there are some gun laws that are absolutely supported by the Constitution, or would be deemed constitutional.
Mhm.
I think that once we get outside of what the founding fathers could have envisioned, when we start talking about, innovative gun control measures, there is no such thing as an innovative gun control measure. If it's innovative, it's unconstitutional. Because if it's
Yeah.
innovative, it was never thought of back in 1791. Right.
Mhm.
So, and you take a look at many of the modern bans, the platform bans, the magazine bans, the ammo bans, the sensitive places bans, and all that. When did all of that start happening? Late 80s is the earliest you'll find any records of it. Most of it happened in the 90s and the 2000s. So, very innovative gun laws, very unconstitutional gun laws as well. But to suggest that there would be no gun laws at all, completely unregulated, and I get it. Some people are like, it's the only amendment that's got the word shall not be infringed. Okay, I get that. But every constitutional right has some limitations to it. I think what modern civilian disarmament believes is the limitations is well beyond what the founding fathers envisioned.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I hear that when people
And
say,
listen, I would say this too, Taylor. For those who believe that I'm wrong there and that all gun laws are unconstitutional, this is what I would say. Could you be right? You could. You could. I mean, I don't think there's case law to back that position up, but could they articulate an argument where you can sit there and go, okay, well, you put some thought into that and that makes some sense. I believe that an argument like that could be made. I'll give you an example of an issue that I kind of have evolved on. Okay. When I started doing this channel 3.5 years ago, I understood why there was ban on what I would refer to as military style firearms, not AR-15s. I'm talking about, M16s, full auto, stuff like that. Cool stuff, right? All right. Then you start doing the channel and you really start geeking out on case law and you start reading it and you start realizing that if you go back and you look at the historical context, not only were people expected to be armed because they were members of the militia, they demanded that they be armed with the most modern weaponry humanly available, designed for warfare.
yep.
Okay. And if that is what our founding fathers' expectations were of how we would be armed as a citizenry, well, then there are several gun control measures, including the ones like on automatic weapons right now, which are being scrutinized heavily with 2 rulings ruling unconstitutional. Maybe we are actually entitled to a far larger swath of weapons than what we're currently allowed to possess.
So
That's entirely possible from a historical standpoint.
I've asked the people this question. If you were to imagine the arms to be along a continuum from hands and fists all the way up to nuclear weapons, right? So classic actual arms all the way up to nuclear arms, and then the gradient in between that all the way up. Where would you personally draw the line? Let's say we talk about like AR-15 is further on this side than the M16.
Is a semi-automatic rifle. It's absolutely lawful. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
But like fully auto grenade launchers, tanks, Tomahawk missiles.
I don't know.
It's a hard way. Yeah, it's one of those questions.
It's a hard question because the test is dangerous and unusual. And when you really think about it, every one of these things we're talking about is dangerous. Right? They're weapons. Weapons are dangerous, especially in the hands of idiots. They're very dangerous. Okay. So really the test comes down to unusual, right? And so you take the F-15 fighter jet, right? take an Apache helicopter, something like that. They're not that unusual, are they?
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's thousands and
Yeah, thousands
thousands,
of them.
right? Thousands of them, and the M1 Abrams tanks. And I mean, where does it go? I
Mhm.
don't really know.
Yeah.
But do I, in my mind, do I believe citizens should have access to nuclear weapons, grenade launchers, F-15s, things like that? I'm probably not sold on that concept.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you've heard this before, but I respond to that with my concept of the combat vote, right? So in a civil system, we vote, and that vote represents one. Like so, and democratically, when we vote, and I know people are going to comment, we're not a democracy. Well, yes, we're not a democracy, but the
Right,
way
right.
that we
Constitutional
elect
republic,
officials is
right.
a democratic method. So when you
That's right.
vote, it represents one, and so I view that's obviously a civil voting system, but in a combat voting system, you still have a vote, right? And so when soldiers are deployed, they are issued a vote, and that vote is their M16, whatever they're issued on an individual level, and then you have unit level issue things, or like a tank or a battleship or whatnot. And so that's where I fall on it in terms of
That's
I think
okay.
individuals
So
should be
something
able
that
to
would
own
be
what a
issued to an
soldier should be able to own.
individual, something that's issued to an individual in the military is something that
Yes.
you believe civilians should have access to.
Right.
But those things that are not, it's not your airplane. It's
Mhm.
it's that happens
Maybe
to be
you
the
form a
jet
trust
you're
or
flying
something.
today, right? Or the
Yeah.
tank. Okay. Well, I mean, hey, listen, at least you put some thought into it. I mean, I see why you would use that as a cutoff. I really do. It's actually pretty well thought out. Not having military experience like you do, it makes sense.
So speaking of machine guns,
Yeah.
saw this the other day. A judge ruled you can own a machine gun. There you go, guys.
So, all right. So there are two cases out there. Let's see if I can remember them. One is Peterson. The other one, I believe, is Moore.
So there's
And these
a
are
federal judge
two-
in Mississippi just dropped a ruling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago that came out. So first of all, that was an as-applied challenge, okay? Which means what the court found is that law was unconstitutional as it applied to that defendant.
Okay.
All right. Interesting, because in the video I did on what can Pam Bondi do, and as we know, one of the things is she's supposed to reevaluate what the position the United States government has taken on all ongoing litigation. As you can imagine, in both of those machine gun cases, the Department of Justice was vehemently arguing that the law was constitutional. Now we have two courts that have said, no, there is no historical analog for this, and therefore it's unconstitutional. Attorney General Bondi could withdraw the government's arguments on those cases. And again, does that mean instantly it becomes the law of the land? No, not at all, obviously. And you're going to still have circuits such as the Ninth Circuit and things like that would never, ever make a ruling that the ban on machine guns is unconstitutional. So listen, right now we can't even get the Supreme Court to accept an issue on the AR-15. I can assure you they have no desire to accept the machine gun ban case right now.
Mm-hmm. You don't I think they mean you don't need nuclear weapons. Cleaning up plutonium dust is a pain in the. The Illinois,
I'll take their word for it.
Yeah, the Illinois FOID card was ruled unconstitutional. FOID. What is that?
Yeah. In fact, that's actually one of the things I'm looking at doing this evening is I'm going to pull that ruling up for all my folks out in Illinois, because I got a huge following out there. I love the folks out in Illinois. A judge, I believe in central or southern Illinois, has ruled that the FOID card is unconstitutional as it relates to the ability to possess firearms inside the home. I'm going to pull the ruling up, probably get a video out tomorrow or the next day for the folks out in Illinois, break it all down for you. I'm assuming that the state of Illinois has already appealed it to a higher court, though. So it's probably an as-applied challenge to this one person. So it doesn't, negate the FOID card. But the FOID card in Illinois is one of the most unconstitutional things out there.
And what does that stand for?
Firearm Owners Identification.
Mm.
So, Taylor, I want you to understand, let's say you're a brand new gun guy in Illinois and you decide, I want to get a gun and I want to be able to conceal carry it. Okay, so here's what happens to you in Illinois. You go through a background check to get your FOID card, okay, which is basically a permission slip to exercise a right.
Do they have one for the First Amendment too?
Yeah, no, they don't have that one yet.
It's odd. Huh?
Yeah, they should have one for the right to vote, and you should have to demonstrate competency before you do that. But and then of course after you get your FOID card, you want to get your concealed carry license, so you go get that too. But that of course requires you to go through a background check to get that also. And then of course when you go to purchase your first firearm, you're going to fill out a 4473 and go through a background check. So you're going through 3 background checks to essentially arm yourself with one firearm in the state of Illinois.
Do you get a security clearance in addition to all this?
No, you don't. Oh, and then once the gun is actually, you get the proceed, you still have to wait an additional 72 hours because those 3 background checks you haven't gone through wasn't quite good enough yet. So Illinois says wait another 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
Illinois just abuses its citizens. They're horrible.
That's awful.
The
I'm
people
sure
are
that really
great. The
helps gun
government
crime too.
sucks.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sure that really prevents people from killing people with guns too, the criminals.
Oh yeah. You know, we'll take a look at how it's solved all the problems on the south side of Chicago. You know, I mean, they don't have a gun violence problem there anymore. The other thing I understand from talking to folks out in Illinois is you have any kind of run-in with the law, and they can revoke that FOID card. There's barely a hearing process. The appellate process is apparently a complete farce. And of course, once you don't have a FOID card, you can't buy a gun inside the state of Illinois. You can't even be in possession of one. So they can.
So they're not even may issue. They're might issue.
Yeah, they're might sort of kind of is what they are.
We'll see. Someone asked.
We're thinking about it. Yeah, that's what they are.
How could a law be found unconstitutional as applied to one person, but not unconstitutional to the rest of us?
Yeah. Okay. So it's a good question. So there are 2 types of constitutional challenges to statutes. One is what's called a facial challenge, and what the plaintiff would have to prove in that situation is that this law, there is no way under any imaginable circumstances that it could ever be applied in a constitutional manner to anyone on God's green earth. So you can imagine that that's a very lofty burden to meet. And so what a lot of times petitioners will do is they will just try to take a more narrow path and be like, hey, as it relates to this person, this law is unconstitutional. So you see this a lot when you're challenging like felons who are trying to restore firearm rights. You take a guy like Range and Range versus Attorney General of the United States, 35-year-old food stamp fraud. So can we really say that Mr. Range is dangerous? No, not at all, right? So you would do an as-applied challenge, because if you're doing a facial challenge, the court would ask the question of you, well, don't you think there are some circumstances where this would be constitutional? Like what happened if he'd been convicted of 2 counts of robbery in the first degree and 1 count of rape? Do you think that person's dangerous? Well, yeah, they probably are actually. So there are circumstances under which the law could be applied constitutionally in that set of circumstances. That's why an as-applied challenge is a much more narrowly focused argument, increases the chance of prevailing. What can happen then, of course, is once you have a successful as-applied challenge, you could see a bunch of other people maybe come in behind that on a facial challenge now saying, well, the authority's already here as it relates to this person. So then when we consider this whole category of people, would not the same result apply? And that's how they can grow from as applied to facial.
Was that what happened with, I don't know if it was FPC or GOA with like the pistol brace stuff, where like it was members of the GOA?
So that was actually more of a standing argument that actually did that. So because what the court had found is that, listen, all of the identified people in this memorandum could be harmed by this law. Well, the only identified people were the members of all the organizations. So that's how they ended up with injunctive relief. Now, as we know, the pistol brace has been enjoined everywhere. The ATF has not actually been enforcing the pistol brace rule. I know there was rumors about some determinations that they had made, but they quickly withdrew those when Eric Pratt, the president of GOA, sent them a nasty little letter. ATF backed off that pretty quick. So those were as applied challenges. But again, you started seeing large segments of the population when these as applied challenges, eventually the court's like, well, who is it constitutional for then? All right.
So I got one more question. And guys, if you have any other questions, please comment them while I ask this and he's answering. But talking about like
if you're a felon, you can no longer have, especially a violent felon, you can no longer have your Second Amendment rights. And something I've always thought about that is like, okay, if this person is in such a state that we don't think they should be able to be armed, they should be in prison.
Carrie Sloan, Stilettos and Shotguns, and We the Female, and all that. That she has been beating that drum for years.
Mhm.
And it's a hard argument to argue against, because they're like, no, seriously, if the person's really that dangerous, what are they doing back out on the streets?
Yeah.
And if you're willing to put them back out on the streets, it's a tough one. It's a real tough one. And this is where my experience as a prosecutor, because I spent the first few years out of law school as a prosecuting attorney here in King County, Washington, downtown Seattle. And I do recognize that there are certain people that are never really safe to society. And I'll tell you who they are. It's not the murderers. I think people on death row can find salvation in some fashion and change who they are. I really do. The pedophiles, I'm not too sure about that.
Mm.
I spent a year of my life prosecuting those types of individuals, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did. It was one of the few times I really enjoyed being a prosecutor. I actually, got pretty jaded over that year, because I was just.
I was going to say that's a lot of evidence to look at
and throw. Oh my God, the kind of material I was having to go through was horrible. They told me it was going to be a 6-month rotation. Turned out to be a 12-month rotation. I loved putting those people in prison, but I will tell you too. I can't ever remember ever getting a report on any one of these types of people where they thought there was a low risk to reoffend again. I just think that there's like a wiring issue or something, It's not a software issue. I think it's like a hardware issue, And I hate to use such blunt, and I'm just trying to explain it, but
yeah, sure.
yeah, I candidly, I'd have no problem with those people being disarmed. I really don't. I know maybe some people don't like me saying that, but that's just my lived experience of prosecuting these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're capable of getting better. I just don't.
Yeah. They should just stay in prison there.
And there is, we have even in Washington State, although our governor and our previous governor really undid a lot of this, we had this thing called the Sexually Violent Predator Civil Order, which basically, let's say you went to when you went to prison for 35 years for all sorts of crazy sexual, violent crime, and now you've served your sentence, and yet the parole is like going, man, this person's still a danger, but they've served their sentence. What are you going to do? Well, in Washington State, for many years, we could civilly commit them to a facility. It was out on a place called McNeil Island, out on an island out in the middle of the Puget Sound, and they had apartments and all that stuff out there. And it was like, no, you're just civilly committed to here for the rest of your life. You're not in prison anymore, but you ain't getting off the island either.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Washington Alcatraz.
Yeah. And then our previous governor felt that was, unnecessary and was breaking the budget. And so basically most of that's been evaporated now, and these people are ending up back in the communities. And then, of course, they end up back in the communities and they end up re-victimizing people.
Wow. It's awful. Well,
yeah.
No other questions, it seems, unless hopefully I didn't miss any. A lot of people.
There was one more thing we were going to talk about real quick. Do you remember we're going to talk about self-defense coverage?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's get on that.
All right. I'm gonna go on a little rant session here for a minute, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I think that's the point of this.
Okay. So let's get a few disclosures out of the way. Number one, I think everyone knows that I'm employed with Right to Bear. And I think very highly of the people. I think very highly of the product. My Washington folks are all going to be freaking out in the comment section. Goes, but it's not available in Washington. We're ever so close, folks. I'm telling you, we're ever so close. State of Washington has been just busting our you-know-what on the deal, but we are working diligently on it. As we also know,
I'm an affiliate with AOR. So
and you're an affiliate with AOR.
For those of you who don't know.
And AOR has clearly some very, very loyal followers, some very loyal fans, okay? And so you got to be doing something right to have that kind of loyalty. And there seems to be this ongoing shin-kicking contest between two organizations that we will not name. I'm not affiliated with either one of them. Okay. And I think I just think we need to knock it off. Okay. That's me on the outside looking in. But here's what I would say to everybody about self-defense insurance, self-defense coverage, whatever it is. Everybody's going to tell you that they built the perfect mousetrap. Everyone's going to tell you that their product is by far the best. So if I sat here and started doing a 2-minute infomercial for Right to Bear, should not everyone on the receiving end take it with a grain of salt? Of course you should. Of course you should. So I'm not going to be doing that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to give you an analogy of why you need somebody in that industry. And I don't care who it is, especially for purposes of this discussion here. I don't care who it is. Being an everyday carrier is like being in the middle of the ocean, like a 10-foot rubber dinghy. That's what it's like. You're out in the middle of the ocean. And if you go overboard in any one direction, ain't nobody there to save you, and you are going to the bottom of the ocean, and you're going to be fish food, okay? What self-defense insurance or self-defense coverage, whatever you want to call it is it's your life vest. It's your life vest. It's what keeps you from going to the bottom of the ocean. Now, do I think that some companies make better life vests than others? That probably is the case. But do I believe that almost all of those life vests are capable of keeping you afloat? I do. And I want you to understand that you may be, what may be a good product in state A because of how they're able to operate in state A may not be as good a product in state B. For the people living in state B, somebody else's product may actually better cater to their needs.
Explain
and that. Just goes, right? So what I want everyone out there who's an everyday carrier, an occasional carrier, anything like that, is just go get a life vest. I don't care who makes the life vest. Taylor's an affiliate with one company, and he can tell you, and they can tell you why they might be the right fit for you. I'm obviously associated with another company, and people who know my history know that previously to that, I was associated with a different company in the same industry. Okay. I, for purposes of this discussion, do not care who you do business with, but you need to be doing business with one of them. And candidly, what you should be doing is you should be calling them and you should be asking them the tough questions. If this happens, what about this? If this happens, what about that? And they need to be able to answer those questions for you. And if they're not, well, then they probably haven't earned your loyalty and your dollars yet. And maybe you need to go back and talk to them again, or you need to go find some other company that's more receptive to talking to you. But this, because it's a very important investment. It is a life vest. You want the damn thing to work. You really do.
Yeah.
Okay. But you need to go out. You need to do your homework. The best thing to do is to talk to word of mouth. Who other people in the industry have they worked with directly? Find out where your attorneys are. I got a program in Mississippi, but it turns out my lawyer's in Florida. I don't know. Take a look. Do they have local options? For example, if I'll just use Right to Bear as an example. If we only had one attorney in California and he happens to be a Bay Area attorney, and now we got a case in San Diego, there's a high probability that attorney has never practiced in San Diego once in his life, doesn't know a soul down there, doesn't know the prosecutors, doesn't know the court clerks, doesn't know the judges, doesn't know who the good judges are and the bad judges are, doesn't know what day of the week you got to file things on the motion calendar, make sure you get the right judge, doesn't know any of that stuff. And so they are at a competitive disadvantage just because of that. So one of the models that we use with Right to Bear is to have multiple attorneys in the state. So we got kind of the geographic regions. Your state, for example, when I was out there to visit you, though, as you know, I originally started in Knoxville, drove all the way across the state. You got a big state, especially going east to west. It gets real big, okay? It's
couple time zones.
Diverse. It's very diverse, right? And so how much has a Knoxville attorney ever practiced in, Nashville?
Memphis. Yeah.
Right? So those are things you should be looking at. Civil protection. Hey, listen, you guys may get me out of the criminal case, but if the family sues me for a wrongful death, what are you going to do about that? That's an important question that you ought to ask. And really, whatever it takes for you to be comfortable with that product, you get to decide that. But for those of you who think that you don't need a product like that, you're wrong. You do need something.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this too. Like one of the most important questions is asking whoever a company, it's like, will you protect me in self-defense? Right. However that self-defense unfolds.
What the most important thing is, Taylor, more than anything, is who's the lawyer that's going to keep your ass out of prison? See, a lot of times you go talk to these companies and they got some cool, slick salesperson and they got a couple of, supervising attorneys and all of that stuff. And by the way, I'm not singling any group out because I will tell you that Right to Bear does a little bit of this sometimes, okay, in their marketing. It's you talk to salespeople. What you want to do is talk to the dude in your or the gal in your state who's going to keep your ass out of prison,
Mhm.
right? Because they could have the coolest president in the world in that company. They can have the coolest salesperson, the coolest public spokesperson, but it is a lawyer who's going to be in the trenches with you that's going to keep your ass out of prison. You need to find out who that person is and ask yourself, am I confident in them?
Mm,
That's the
mhm.
most important relationship in the whole thing. No matter
Yeah.
how slick talking they are, no matter
Ahead of
how many
time.
other benefits they offer you.
Yeah, to have that conversation ahead of time so that you're not
Yeah.
meeting that person for the first time in the most stressful moment of your life.
Right. And then realizing, like, oh shit, this dude's only been out of law school for 18 months.
Mhm.
Crap. You don't want that guy to be cutting his teeth on your livelihood when you're looking at 20 years in prison or something like that. So those are things that as a consumer, you should just be exploring regardless of who you're thinking about doing business with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. A couple questions to wrap this up. Will I be able to continue open carry in Washington State as I do not yet have a CWP?
Okay. So right now there is no bill in Washington State to ban open carry. Open carry is this always shocks people when I say it. Open carry is quite legal in the state of Washington. It
Mhm.
really is. Has been forever, and I, for whatever reason, never talked about doing away with it. I would encourage the individual to go get, we call it a CPL here in Washington State, concealed pistol license, because it would allow you to carry loaded in your automobile as well. And candidly, as a criminal defense attorney, I'll tell you that the place you're most likely going to come into armed conflict is actually on the roadway.
Yeah. Road rage is pretty serious.
Oh,
Someone
terrible.
said, what if I cannot afford one of those companies?
Well, if you can't, I'm sorry about that. I don't know how many of them are offering a sliding scale. My question would be, can you afford to do it, or can you afford not to do it?
Mm.
I mean, some of these companies are 12, 13, 14 bucks a month. It's not like it's really blowing the bank, but I get everyone's got their own financial situation. And
Mhm.
certainly as a country as a whole right now, with costs being across the board way higher than they should be, everyone's being pinched right now.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a very, very wise investment. It really is.
Could you recommend someone that goes through all Washington bills, not just gun bills, or would be
Yes.
able to do that, like education, parents' rights, etc.?
Yeah. I got just exactly what you should be doing. For anyone in Washington State concerned about the whole picture, you need to sign up for the Conservative Ladies of Washington's Legislative Action Center. Now, I know it says Conservative Ladies of Washington, but it's open to everybody. It's open to everyone with conservative ideals. But the Legislative Action Center is the best in the business. It will get you up to date on every bill, what's happening, when it's happening, and what you can do to get involved in the fight. Because we got a lot of crazy stuff going on out here, Taylor. Crazy stuff going on out here. So
Is
the
it that
Second
one
Amendment, yeah, I mean,
I
we
just
got,
put up?
what's that?
Is it that one I just put up there? I found I think I found their website, conservativeladiesofwashington.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And they just do a really fantastic job of getting you all, because we got some stuff as it deals with the schools, with our taxes. We got some transgender stuff going on in this state that your head will explode if I told you about that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be fighting for out here in Washington right now.
Awesome. Well, you got anything else?
Good, always good hanging with you, man.
Yeah, man. You too.
You want to tell everybody that I came out your way and learned to shoot from you, but I actually was a competent shooter.
He was very good. He was very good. I didn't have to do much.
I will tell you that.
fun.
I will tell you that program that we did was awesome, and I actually still go to the range and I utilize some of those drills, and I really do. And I just thought it was a really cool class that a lot of people could really benefit from. So, target focused shooting, man, check it out. Taylor's got a good program. I enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, if anyone's interested, I will put a link. Hold on. Where is it? Where's the chat? There we go. There's a link to that course he's talking about. It's a target focused clinic. Basically, it teaches you how to do target focused aiming instead of front sight focus, because if you ever need to use your gun to defend yourself, I do not advise looking at the thing 2 feet in front of your face and not the thing trying to kill you. So
Sights
there
are
you go.
static, targets are dynamic. See,
Yep.
I remember that stuff.
There you go.
And we train to a higher standard. See,
There you
I
go.
got it all down, man.
There we go. Where he signed off. Well, Bill, I appreciate it, man. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks,
Guys,
buddy.
I hope you like it. If you haven't already, please, on both of our channels, like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, train to a higher standard.